Welcome to Flat Earth Debate Live. I'm your host Nathan Oakley, and if you are new to this channel, or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe and hit the bell notification icon to keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. If you'd like to join the community debate, then go to nathanoakley.com and check out the Flat Earth Debate forum. If you'd like to support this channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they are live. There's also a PayPal, Patreon and crypto link in the info box below the video. Most importantly, if you'd like to join the discussion, simply mute the page you are currently watching, then click the link in the info box below this video to join the panel and express your views on the shape of the Earth. If you do join, please don't swear. If you do, you'll be ejected, and if you are, please don't try to rejoin the stream using sock accounts. You'll be warmly welcomed back on the next stream. Please also share the show on social media. Sharing the show obviously increases the live audience, but this in turn increases the chances of a more diverse panel. So please share the show. And one last time, if you're new to the channel or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe and hit the bell notification icon to keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. Now we are joined by Slick James Johnson. How you doing, Slick?
Oh, good morning. Good morning.
Good morning to you too. Going to do probably the most relaxed, laid-back housekeeping. I didn't make that coffee, so in the pre-show I was like, right, I'm going to get the pre-show running, and I'm a bit out of sorts at the moment, having just had my second child, and I forgot to run the second show yesterday, so I'm like completely out of order, and forgot the significance and importance of the intro to this show when it was pre-recorded. So I was like, set it recording, it doesn't matter, it goes out on the second channel, and who cares, you know, it'll go out while there's a limited audience of maybe 10 to 50 people during the first 10 minutes, and then they sort of escalate over time. But then I suddenly twigged while I was in the kitchen knocking out the coffee. I was like, hang on a minute, this pre-show goes out to Nathan Oakley 1980 audience, doesn't it? Oh, bum. I better go and sit and talk about something. You can't just have 15 minutes of dead air at the beginning of a show. That's pretty terrible.
All right. Well, I'm the only one here. This almost feels like an exclusive interview.
It's Slick under the microscope. You do get a lot of attention, Slick. I've said this a few times. You're obviously doing something right if you're getting as much flack as you are.
Yeah, and that's my contention also. I had somebody sent me a comment on one of my videos earlier telling me to get away from Flat Earth. You have nothing to offer. So I responded, I said, well, I'm glad to see that you're triggered. That gives me that's a sign that maybe I should turn up the heat.
Yeah, maybe. Triggered losing.
Yeah, I mean, I think just a lot of people, they have expectations of what you should and you shouldn't say or be. It's just like if you're in Flat Earth, well, you know, people have adopted Flat Earth to be an institution. They say, well, this is the guidelines of our institution. And if you don't fall within them, then, you know, you're a shill, you're a fake, you're a, you know, whatever. So that's the issues that I have a lot, because I have my own mind. You know, I think for myself. I don't really need to look for any different resources.
Hey, 10th man.
Good morning. Very hard to get on your show today.
Yeah, that bit I've got down. So yeah, I've got the link out nice and early. Refresh if you started watching before the show went live and you want the link, just click refresh and it should be in the info box.
Yeah, I must have done it 4 times. It just finally, it's been happening lately.
Just me. Last couple of shows I just forgot to publish the link, so it's just the link from the previous day. That's all it was.
Oh, I see. Okay, it's from yesterday.
Yeah, it's just my fault. I take full responsibility. I'm very sorry to anybody who was trying to join and just kept on going into yesterday's empty hangout.
Well, it is called a hangout for a reason.
Yeah, hanging around.
Good morning, Slick.
Good morning, Tim. How are you, sir?
Good. My coffee here, too.
Me too.
Hopefully you two can chat amongst yourselves 2 minutes so my coffee machine doesn't overpressurize and blow the kitchen up.
Right, just to see the
Sure.
Oh, lots of feedback. Oh, it's Sleeping Warrior. Hey, ding!
Yo,
How's it going?
reasonable. You?
Yeah, I'm alright. I'm same as always.
Have I missed housekeeping?
You haven't missed housekeeping. Shout out to Leonardo Gonzalez for the super chat. Thank you very much for the support. Really appreciate it.
So if we've not missed super chat, can we go through it?
Not missed super chat. You mean housekeeping?
Sorry, if we've not missed housekeeping, can we go through it?
Yeah, sure. Which particular question did you want me to leave a big gap for? Just
The first one.
Okay, no worries. Any signs of Earth-based curvature?
Yeah. Dazza, the cameraman's got some curve.
Really? I did watch Ranty's thing earlier, so tell us all about it. What do you mean?
Well, me and Ranty had a conversation after. Well, we had a conversation before, and we had a conversation after. Right? Why the hell is that flashing like a bitch? Hang on. I think it's because my OBS is running. Let me just get rid of OBS. Right, what the hell's going on there? Why is it doing that? Share. Right, now it's doing it. Right, so can you see my screen, guys?
The audience can't, but they will in a second. Yes, they can.
Right, so me and Ranty had a conversation. I had a message from somebody called Sean, and he asked me, would I have a look at this video and just let me know what the flat Earth explanation is for it? And his point's really simple. It's in the first 7 seconds, we see boats that appear to be behind the horizon. And he wants to know how this is explained. So what I'll do is I'll just play the first couple of seconds. And I've got it on slow motion so that you can see the zoom. But what basically Ranty has explained the water side to this in his previous hangout, his most recent hangout. If you haven't checked out Ranty's explanation for this on the water, go and check it out because it's really good. Me and Ranty had a secondary conversation, which is equally and probably worse. I would say it's worse than the water argument, because we can identify these islands, and it's not very good for the ball. Now, what we're going to do is this is going to try and show the curve of the Earth, right? But notice the first little island in the foreground. Then you got the chunky one that's the second island. And you've got a third island that looks a bit like a breast. And then you've got these two boats that indicate curvature of the Earth, right? So you've got the first boat in the foreground. And then, oh, wait, why is the other one behind the horizon, dickheads? Yeah, it's because it's a ball, isn't it? Right, so there's the evidence for supporting curvature, right? However, if it is curve, then there's this other little mountain thing in the background, this other little island in the background. It's definitely a landmass, right? It's not looming. It's not a mirage. It's definitely a landmass. And we're able to establish and work out what that landmass is. And if you want the proper explanation for this, check it out on my video at my channel. I've just been live just now, and you can see it on my channel. I was as short and concise as possible. This is where the guy was. Omanu Beach Surf Life Saving Club, right? He was somewhere in the car park. It doesn't really matter exactly where. It's not going to change things too much. But he claims an elevation of 30 feet above water. So that gives us one of the parameters. Now, obviously, if we're going to beg the question for them, all we need to do is get the distance. So for us to work out what we're looking at, I'm going to assert that the first island that we saw on the left is this one. The second one is this one. And then the two in the background are this island that's over here, which would be Kawara Island. And then we've got another one that's evident in the picture, and it's here. Now, when I've matched these up on my hangout just now, they match, right? This one is 44 miles away. Now, the clarity on the day is clearly pretty good. Now, we know that we can see about 40 miles on the Isle of Man day, and that was an exceptionally good clarity day. But we know Kawara Island is the third island, and it matches identically what it looks like, because Kawara Island is the one that looks a little bit like a breast, I think it was. Let's zoom it in a bit. So I'm going to claim that looks a little bit like a breast. So when we look at the image that Dazza has, which is here, we take this out a little bit. I'm going to claim that breast there, that island that we see on the left of the image, is this breast-looking island here, because it looks a little bit like a breast. So if we've got that one right, it's just a case of identifying what the next island is, and there is no other island. The only island it could be that's in close proximity to it in terms of angles is this little bugger here. Oops. But it's 44 miles away. So it's not like it's 80 miles away. It's 44 miles away. On a good day, you can see 40 miles.
I'm going to say that's a bit of a You absolutely certain it's that island?
Can't. Hey, flat Earth.
Yeah, flat Earth.
Well, we know we could see about 40 miles on the Isle of Man one, and we can identify these 3 islands here, and the third island looks like that breast. So it has to be an island that's just off to the right of it and in close proximity to it. Now, there is another island that's there, but it's dead small. So the only one I can see that it is this one. And I'm going to assert that it is that one, just so I can, because if I don't make an assertion, a bold assertion, he'll not respond to it. So I have to put my balls on the line and say that I think it's that one, because I can identify Koala Island, and it's that breast-looking one. And then the 2 boats are in here. You'll find that the boats are going to a port that's over here somewhere. In fact, actually, there's the ports. Maybe. I don't know, actually. Maybe not. But the ports that they're going to will be in and amongst this area somewhere. But I've got to state that there's an island that I can identify as this one. Because otherwise they won't.
Can I ask you a question? That island to the right, Mirror Island, that shows in the video, you're saying that it's left of that, correct?
Yeah, well, if you go back to Daz's video, you can see Mirror Island.
Okay, because I was thinking you were referencing Mirror Island, but you're referencing the one right behind the Breast Island. Gotcha.
Yeah. So I think that that Wera Island that you're referring to is the one that's in the picture right at the start. I think it's this one here on the far right.
Yeah, now that gives me good reference, Phil. Go on.
So if we go with that one that you've just said about that island there, that's hang on, where's my Google Earth Pro? That Mare Island is, I think that the one we're seeing right at the very start of the image, Mare Island, is that one there.
Yeah.
Is that one? So I've got to find an island that explains the landmass that we see, and the only one I can see that's realistic is this one. Now, it's got an elevation of about 350 to 400 feet, peaks out at 380-ish or something like that. But if I run that over, about 350 feet at a peak, and it averages about 300 across the whole island. So when we look back at the video, when we zoom back in again, I'm going to assert that we're seeing all of the island, and I'm going to assert that it's Slipper Island, and I'm going to assert that this is not possible on a sphere because it's only 300 feet tall, and the curve calculator, if that really is the curve of the Earth, and that's the boats that we're seeing behind the curve, when we do the curve calcs on it, which are here, it tells us that at this distance, we should see 44 miles of distance at 30 feet elevation as quoted by the cameraman, and we're not going to question it, we'll just accept it. With standard refraction, the whole amount, 793 feet, should be missing, right? It's only 300 feet tall. Yeah. So I'm going to have to point the finger and say, I think this is Slipper Island. I think we're seeing all of it. I think this needs explanation by Dazza because he's the one that's created it, because this mountain in the background here is in the picture. We see it, and we shouldn't see it. None of it should be seen. So if this really is the curve of the Earth, these boats, then that mountain absolutely should not be seen because it's 800 feet behind the curve. But it's only 300 feet tall. So I'm going to assert we see it. I'm going to assert that it's not looming, and this needs to be explained. And the other thing is, notice what's not in the image. For some reason, don't know why, we don't seem to have that layer of mirroring on the horizon very obviously, if it's there at all. Don't know why, but it seems not to be in the image.
Yeah, it is. Oh, is that... it's hard to tell if that's just the bottom... I don't know what that little bit's called.
That's the plimsoll line of the boat.
Okay. I mean, yeah,
I think
at first glance, it looks like there is no fold line of a couple of millimeters.
No,
You'd normally expect a couple of millimeters, right? But maybe that little tiny bulge is. Maybe you can, if you can get in, I suppose it's a video, you can't really move around much, can you?
No, but I'm going to assert that most of these boats that have that bulbous part at the front, because it's where the boat, you can tell from a distance where the plimsoll line is, its load line. I'm going to assert that boat's just emptied its cargo, and that's why it's sitting higher in the water. And I'm also going to assert that the boat in the background is probably on its way in because he's loaded and he's about to get rid of his cargo. So he's on his way out, he's on his way in. I'm not going to assert it strongly, but I am going to assert that's a case because that one appears to be showing its plimsoll line because it looks like it's reddy brown. Might be wrong, not too bothered. But my point is that, well, let's say this is the curve of the Earth, then it has to be consistent, right? And it has to be exponential relative to the observer. So what's the explanation for the landmass that's in the background? Because that needs to be explained. So Dazza, And any ballers, let's have an identification on what that land is. I'm going to say Slipper Island. I'm going to say it's way gone behind the curve of the Earth. So what's the explanation for it, back, guys?
Well, on that map of Google, it would only have to be Slipper Island because we didn't see any other island, correct? If you go back to the Google map. No,
Say that again,
yeah.
sir.
You don't need to see his identification. These are not the arguments you're looking for.
I knew that
Well,
was coming. Yeah, it
yeah,
is
so I
logical, 10th man, absolutely. It's the only thing there. So, yeah, what else could it be?
Correct.
And
So,
I have to I have to poke the bear, otherwise he'll not respond. So basically, send out the messages to Dazza, the cameraman, that he's proved that the Earth's flat. I'm going to assert that that's Slipper Island, and if I've got it wrong, I've got it wrong. But it appears to me that that's Slipper Island. It's 44 miles away, and if you're at a 30-foot elevation, according to the nonsense calculator, we should not see 800 feet of it, and that's with your nonsense refraction. If it was without your refraction, it's nearly 1,000 feet. The whole mountain is easily gone behind the curve. So let's have an explanation, guys. Is that Slipper Island? And if it is, how is it possible that we can see it when you've got to bend light an awful lot, and we know that light doesn't even follow an arced path? So that's me done for today. There's no curvature.
Got a sniper in. Jon Snow.
Did you catch him, Arwin?
Well done.
Good
I hope he did.
presentation. Hopefully you don't all get sniped.
No, we're here.
I
That
got
was
him.
good.
You still here, Anthony?
Yes.
I got him.
Very good.
Well
You're
done,
still
Arwin.
here. You're still here, Arwin. Well done.
So yeah, Nathan, 44 miles should be 800 feet behind the curve. That includes bendy light bullshit.
No, it shouldn't.
And if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But
No,
that's what we're here to.
That's not what I
We're
mean.
here to.
I mean, you said it, and I almost interrupted, but it was right at the beginning of your presentation. But you were like, if we're going to beg the question for them, well, what that means is, if we're going to assume our outcome for them, in other words, if we're going to automatically assume that this is taking place on a sphere, and then use geometric only, perspective exclusive mathematics to say what it would look like in side profile, and then compare that to the actual view that he's presented on his camera, then no, it's not proving anything at all, and never will, regardless of what they declare. All they've done is beg the question with the calculation and take an optical phenomena, presumably a limited angle to these boats in the far distance, and then claim that that's Earth curvature. Well, no, the boats are getting smaller with distance, and they will get to a point where their view is limited due to the limited angle at the bottom closest to the deck, something we've discussed in great detail. So there will be another explanation for this that includes the angular resolution limit of the camera and the distant object. Now, he will not have accounted for that in any way, shape or form. I absolutely guarantee it.
Well, it seems like the consistency of all these different videos and pictures, one thing keeps coming up, and that's when they just have water, it's the optics playing tricks on your eyes. But when they have a foreground of an island or a building, it proves that it's just the mirroring or the water magnifying something. Just like when you put a straw into a glass, it bends, or you put that boat oar into the ocean, it bends, but we know it doesn't bend. So if it's just water, then the optics are, being tricked. But if you got landmass, like the one he just showed, it just proves that it's not happening.
Wow, look at all the wobbly glass in this picture. The wobbly Earth.
Cool. Any signs of axial rotation of the Earth-based variety again?
Just the beginning of movies.
I haven't seen any.
Any scientific evidence of gravity?
Just a belief.
Aberration. That's it.
No.
A belief in the aberration.
Right. Oh, a belief in the aberration to be literally real.
Which is just a belief.
There's nothing wrong with the word belief if it's based on facts. The problem is when people use loose science and falsehood and get someone to believe.
Right, like a begging the question proof of nothing perspective hijacking curve calculator. and an assumption of an R value, that sort of thing.
Correct.
I don't agree, but I hear you.
What about the distance to the sun? Any evidence of that? The measured distance to the sun?
Well, if I measure the distance of the sun in this picture,
Hold on.
then I actually have to go there and figure out that the sun is not there, but the same distance up ahead. So I don't think there is a distance to the sun. Not any measurable distance.
Why
anywhere.
why is it that we need to know the distance to the sun in the flat Earth versus why is it we need to know the distance of the sun in the heliocentric? What do you think?
A lot of what they claim is hinged around the distance to the sun and their mathematical formulas that they assert make up our reality and the universe. So when
Correct.
they claim their mathematics, their distances, their sizes of the claimed physical bodies that are the lights in the sky, it all hinges around the distance to the sun, which is asserted by them. The point of the question is that when they claim they know the distance to the sun, it's based on an assumption that the Earth is a sphere, an assumption that Venus is a physical body and the same size as the presupposed sphere Earth, and then they simply apply Kepler's third law. That's it.
Right. So if it wasn't for them sticking that thought in our head, if you were to just look at the sun and the moon, they're approximately the same size. No one would, on their first guess, probably say it's 93 million miles away. Especially when the moon, you're able, with your just naked eye, see different features on it. And the sun being just, pure light is, there's no features really to make out. So if they hadn't put that out there, most people would just look at it and say, wow, that's just, like Slick says, it's just the right distance away to warm this planet. But no one would give it 93 million miles in a million years.
I remember a scene out of Family Guy a few years back when I was actually watching television, and they sort of went back in time to the Stone Age, and instead of a television set, they've got like the Flintstones version where it's a hollowed out rock, and somebody gets inside the hollowed out rock, and they've got the two news reporters, and they do their little news report, and they said, coming up next, that big light in the sky. What is it, and how can we worship it?
Yeah, nice.
Well, see, that's basically all part of the belief system. So, in other words, the sun, the moon, and all of these things are right where they need to be for experience. But just like, 10th Man just mentioned, they need to put these distances on it so that they can trigger your belief system. Because once your belief system is triggered, well, now you can be controlled through the system.
We're figuring out the
Well,
keywords.
yeah, because they want to control you. Like you said, the operative word is they don't want another truth or the facts to be your beliefs to be based on those things. So they have to hijack so that they can steal your strongest part of you is your beliefs. And so that makes you, wake up in the morning to do something is your beliefs. And so they want to own all that.
But they do it with language. The conduit's always the same. It's the trigger words that force you into beliefs and assumptions. And big shout out to that Theo guy. Over the last couple of days, I've thought about very little else in terms of this debate. How we assume obstruction. It's just automatically
Concealment.
Again? Yeah, concealment. The concealment of the boat in that picture that Anthony just had up a moment ago is ultimately speaking pre-programmed into the globe side of this argument that obstruction, in quotations, is Earth curve. It's Earth curve obstruction. And the only attributable cause by the other side of this argument to anything like that, so those boats, well, what's the cause if you ask the publisher of that video? Who is it? Wolfie?
Dazza, the cameraman.
Dazza. If you ask Dazza, what's the cause of that? Well, there's only ever one single cause. Well, it's Earth curve obstruction. That's the only cause. Forget the angles, forget the diffraction limit of the camera, forget the conditions on the day. All of that is replaced with an assumption of R in every single instance. So the only cause for them is obstruction. Well, it's obstruction, Earth curve obstruction. So when we're discussing it, why should we beg the question of obstruction for them when it's perspective, a limited viewing angle? Why would we always say, well, why is this boat obstructed? Well, it isn't.
Well, the reason why you would beg the question for them is to demonstrate that it's not comporting with their claims of bendy light and bullshit.
I agree.
Well, like you said, it should be consistent. So how come when you go as high as a helium balloon and from that 128,000 all the way down to a mountaintop or an airplane, you don't see it?
Yeah, you should have an apparent edge sphere curving away from you when you rise up in altitude. It's one of the first things I came across, however many years, 3 and a bit years, maybe probably coming up 4 years ago now. But Rory Cooper, my perspective, first 3D model I saw from him was a helium balloon or a hot air balloon rising up above a sphere and rising up above a flat plane. And you can bet your bottom dollar which one looks like we actually experience. It's not a sphere. It would fall away. You know, if it's curving away from you and you get higher, that just exaggerates that effect. The higher you go, the more you see it falling away from you, until eventually
It's
it
a
becomes a
continual
ball
drop.
below you. But you go higher and
drop is
higher and higher, and the horizon rises with you. It's not like you're getting higher and higher and transitioning. So when they show you the Earth from space, total bollocks, we'll get to that in a minute. But when they show you that, you've got a sphere, a circle on a 2D page, on a black backdrop. Well, you should have a transition between the flat horizon at ground level and that completely curved surface that you can see in its entirety as a sphere. There's obviously going to be a transition from point A to point B, and it should get ever more and more curvy. Well, the only thing we ever have to assert that is GoPro lenses, because it doesn't.
Right. But it's also pictures and videos over water that causes most of the optics. If it wasn't for the water doing what it does to our optics, that picture that we just saw that showed the landmass, it didn't screw up the landmass because the landmass is not water. We saw it. Shouldn't be there.
Can we move on?
Yeah.
Any evidence that you can have gas pressure without a container for all of those idiots who believe that the sky is actually a vacuum known as outer space?
No.
Yeah, right. Like I said, once again, you have to believe it. In other words, if you just look up into the sky, you just see what you see. But if you can tap into a person's beliefs and get them to believe that there's a vacuum up there, well, now you can control most of their thoughts, because all you have to do is tell them whatever, and they'll just have to believe it.
Never been demonstrated that it can work.
But this is another, I've mentioned Theo and him talking about us begging the question of obstruction when we look out to the horizon. Well, in the same instance, we, up until recently, not very recently, but up until recently, we would beg the question for them. And when I say we, sorry, Slick, please don't get angry. I mean, generally,
That's okay.
flat earthers would start arguing about what is and is not possible in the vacuum of the sky, otherwise known as space. Well, you're automatically begging the question for them, and it's a win-win. At the end of that argument, the audience, you and the person you're arguing with are discussing whether or not space has a possibility of rockets working in it, rather than whether or not it's bloody real, which it isn't. It's a second law of thermodynamics violation. You can't have the gas pressure we breathe next to a vacuum, because the gas would fill the space.
Well, as you remember, Nathan, I said you should come up, and maybe with Theo helping us on the obstruction bit, the same argument that we posed with gas pressure without a container, we need to do that with no obstruction when we look out on these pictures. We should have so we don't beg the question. I just haven't got the words to do it, other than side comments of water doesn't bend, et cetera, but maybe, together we can come up with something like that.
I did it with Ranty the other day. So what I did was I basically got him to remove the Earth curve from a Walter Bilsonin depiction of the geometric calculations they use to hijack perspective and call it Earth curve. And you just rubbed out the curve, put it on a flat surface, twisted it back around the right way, because they have you standing on the top of a ball looking down, so it doesn't look weird that you're actually tilting back on your ankles. But that aside, you end up looking at it in a slightly different light when you go, well, they've drawn about 5 lines from this guy's eye, and it kind of looks like they're angles. But they're not. There's only one relevant line, what they call the line of sight, single line, not an angle, excluding perspective. But at first glance, it's reminiscent of angles, because you've got this line going up into the sky that says it's your eye level, and then you've got your line of sight, and then you've got your distance line, and all these other lines coming from this guy. Like I say, it kind of looks like they're making up angles, but they're not. It's just one line.
So I'm trying to picture that. So you're saying they should only have one line, which is at the horizon, and not have all the other lines.
I'll go and get it, and I'll bring it up. Give me just 30 seconds. Talk amongst yourselves.
Yeah, that Rory Cooper does put out some good stuff.
Yeah, my perspective, for anybody who wants to know who Rory Cooper is, that's his YouTube channel name, My Perspective. That's what it's all about.
He's the one who shares a lot about perspective, because he's an artist. He really has a good handle on it.
And he's been at it for a long, long time.
Yes.
For me. Do what, sorry?
Okay, so I found the video. Let's see if I can share it with you guys. Bear with me.
Gas pressure above your head.
Without a membrane. It's been reversed as well, if you think about it, because the pressure is not being pushed down, it's being pushed up because it's pressure. But they tell us it's being pulled down by gravity, so it's kind of like a net force. So what that means is that we're in the middle of an explosion, but gravity is holding the explosion to the Earth, and we're in the middle of that explosion. It's nonsense. We're in pressure, and it requires containment.
Right, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, so all this top one is this bottom one, but with the bulge removed. Yeah, so this curved line that's claimed to be the obstruction of Earth curvature between you and the item you are viewing. And what I mean is, this looks like angles, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's not. I'll do it on this screen so you can see where I'm pointing my mouse. So you've got all these lines coming out from the guy's eye, and it looks like they're representative of angles that you can see, but they're not. They're sod all to do with that. You know, you've got the horizon line, you've got the eye level, but this line that changes from red to green, or green to red, is the quote-unquote line of sight. Well, this should be 2 lines, because in a perspective representation, number one, you never get to see the side of your own head. You see what's represented to this guy's eyes, not his head. You never see your own head in a picture. But
are you talking about the Y and Z axis, adding another axis?
What I'm saying is that all I've done in this top example is to say that between here and here is your angle of view. It's a perspective representation. So this is the angle that you can see as you look out towards the horizon. Yeah? If you wanted to say, well, if you want to include the sky and everything else that you can see, maybe you draw another line out like this. And that would then give you the totality of the angle that he can view. Obviously, you can't see above his head or behind him, because it's, you know, that's not feasible. But this is representing... It's exciting for my kid, I can tell. This is representative of angles. You excited?
That's great.
Very exciting. So yeah, and that's all they've got is one line, and it's either hidden by Earth curve, what we would say this being the most limited angle. So to the hidden section, this angle at the bottom where it says horizon and this bottom line, that's your limited angle at this distance. Yeah? But they're only giving you one line. It's only the line of sight in the Earth curve representation. So it doesn't matter if this item here is 10,000 miles. So I'm going to give this item here a value of 10,000 miles away. Yeah? And it's not gone because it's too small. It's only gone because the Earth has obstructed it. That's the only explanation they give. There's no reason for it to be just gone because it's too small. It's 10,000 miles away. No. There's just X amount of bulge in the way. And that's basically the hijacking of perspective. If this was 10,000 miles away, it would have disappeared due to its limited angular size. You know, well and truly gone. Would this calculator, the bottom calculator, the Earth curve geometry calculator, say that it's gone because it's too small to see? Hell no. It's only one cause. Earth curve bulge. Well, what about the fact that it's too far? Well, that doesn't factor in because we're in side profile. We don't need perspective. It's like, yeah, but you're comparing it to pictures. Show me any instance where a picture that's being compared to this calculator shows the side of the photographer's head. You'll never get one because it's a complete bastardization of what we see. We don't see like this. But if you're going to try and represent us seeing like this, in other words, a side profile of how we see, it's represented as angles. In other words, you can draw a square box here and say that's the frame of your picture that you get. A square box, yeah? That's the actual picture, but to try and represent that in side view, you've got to represent the angles from his eye to the extremities of the frame of the picture. And in that picture, there's a boat, and it's at 10 miles, and you can't see the bottom of it. Well, why? Because it's in the most limited angle. The bottom section of the boat has a very tight angle, and the further you push this away, the further you push the target to the right, the more narrow this angle gets. Until eventually it's so small that you can't see the bottom of this item. And eventually the entire item, if you push it far enough, will go into this very small angle where it's too small to see. That's a fact. That's called perspective. But what do they call it on the globe side? It's nothing to do with that. It's only the Earth getting in the way. That's the only cause. Bulge.
Yeah, Sleeping Warrior did that video at the beginning of the show. So if you put your cursor back on that image, if you would.
Jonathan Doherty's just joined. We're going to get sniped.
And Nathan, can you blow up that image again on your screen?
Sorry, did you want Sleeping Warrior to present something? Is that what you were asking?
No. I want you. Yeah, okay. Now take your. Oh, well.
Oh, you
go
want
back
it back
to that
up?
picture.
Sorry.
Yeah, go back to that picture. Then I'm just tying in what Sleeping Warrior showed earlier. Okay, so now just make that bigger for us all. Okay, so that bottom one, which is the way the Globers want to show it. Let's say to the right where it says visible hidden, right over the curve. Let's say that's where that island was, right? And then let's say in between were those boats. If they're right, that island shouldn't be there by their own curve. But
Right.
in Sleeping Warrior's video today, the island was there. So it's obviously optics.
Absolutely. So the boat that's here in this side profile, they're saying, well, the boat that's just here is slightly further over the curve. Well, therefore, Anthony's point is, well, then the island is much further over the curve. But we see it. Well, that's because it's sod all to do with Earth curve and everything to do with perspective.
Here.
Any other comments, or can I take this off screen now?
No, I'd just like to say that I do notice that a lot of times they try to slip that side view in on you. And if you're not careful of it, they got you.
Right. They love perspective hijacking. That's what they do. They stick it in side profile and say, well, let's not worry about perspective because you don't need perspective in a side elevation. Because obviously we're comparing this to pictures where you can see the side of your own head when you click the shutter. Everybody sees the side of their own head when they use a camera. That's how cameras work. Well, naturally, no, that would be you hijacking perspective. Ignoring the very fact that things get smaller into the distance and asserting that when they do, and maybe even disappear completely. Well, why has that island disappeared completely? Oh, because Earth curves got in the way. Isn't it just too far away? No. Look, if I mathematically plot it out, I exclude that. Right, but the picture's still got it. Shh. Earth curve.
Oh man, this is fun.
But that's how it's thanks to Rory. Big shout out to Rory, because he's brought up this subject like a complete idiot and asserted that the Earth curve calculators include perspective, giving us a nice, useful opportunity to point out just how wrong he is, and in so doing make it really, really clear to everybody watching how they've been lied to with this calculator. Well, they've just removed the very nature of reality, the fact that when you look at something in the distance, it's smaller than when it's in front of your face. They just exclude that and call the effect of things becoming smaller in the distance Earth curve obstruction. It's a laugh. I think the people who believe in this calculator are basically stupid. Like Rory. As thick as Rory. Because maybe in their brain they think like Rory that it includes perspective when it absolutely does not. Because you'd need to include perspective, that's presumably Rory's logic. Well, it must include perspective. We see in perspective, so it must include it, right? We live on a globe. No, Rory. That's how you've been lied to, my friend. That's how you've all been lied to, and continue to be lied to, by the people who punt that calculator. Either they're lying to you, or just as stupid as you.
And on top of that, if you'll notice the other day when Jose came in on the show and was telling me what I had to see, in other words, he was telling me what I had to.
Oh, did Slick get booted? Jonathan Doherty joined the call, and then we've lost the panel, I presume. Anybody else still here?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'm still here.
Owen, did you get him?
No. What? I only see flat.
Yeah,
Earth
Slick and
Warrior
Tent Man
in
were
now.
taken out.
Bastards.
But I
That's a
see
shame.
nobody in the back chat.
Did
Do you want to start a
to-
new one, Nate?
I could do. Well, I might do. How long we got left? 15 minutes. Yeah, I suppose.
Yeah, go.
Secondary account.
Stay in the hangout just while I do it, because there's a few things I've got to do just to get it rocking and rolling. That's annoying.
I can make a presentation to fill time if you want. I've got something else to share.
Yeah, be my guest. That'd be brilliant.
All right, so if you wouldn't mind screen sharing me for me, please, Nathan.
Yep.
I remember back in the day when I was new to Flat Earth, I remember watching Eric DeBay's video and, you know, the 200 proofs. And one of the things that he said that the tides were not caused by the moon. And he says that some places have 2 tides a day, some places have 3 times a day, and there are places that have 4 times a day. Now, I just took that on face value and accepted it, never thought anything else about it until recently when I saw some dope in chat somewhere telling people that the moon controls the tides. Well, the moon doesn't control the tides because there's enough evidence that shows that whilst there was an eclipse, which is obviously when or getting close to the eclipse at new moon phase, you can't be at low tide whilst you've got the moon and the sun in the sky. And there's guys around the earth that are taking pictures of it. But anyway, forget about that for a minute. What I want to show you is this. All you've got to do to get this is type in Google Southampton Tide Times, and then you just click the Southampton VTS link at the bottom. And what that does is takes you to this page. Now check this. If the moon really does cause the tides, how is it possible that we'll pick that date, for instance, the 20th of the 4th, at 2 minutes past midnight, high water, so high tide, and then second tide at 2:24, low tide at 5:50, high tide at 12 midday, 20 past 12, and then second tide at 2, and then low water. So for some reason, it's got 2 tides. It's got 2 tides coming in, but only one going out. Now, if the moon's causing it, then there is no other explanation because it has to be the moon that's causing it. But if you're going to argue something like, well, it's the North Sea that does it, you moron, or something else that does it or whatever, that means it's not the moon, isn't it? Because it's important that if you're going to have like the moon being the cause, that everywhere has got a high tide, a low tide, a high tide, a low tide. But Southampton appears to have 4. So what's the explanation for it? Because it's supposed to be the moon. So if you're going to argue that it's something to do with the North Sea coming down through the estuary, well, then it's not to do with the moon, is it? So just bear that in mind. Southampton in England, on the south coast of England, seems to, for whatever reason, have 4 tides a day. If it's really caused by the moon, it shouldn't be caused by any other explanation, whatever that may be. And we'll give it you. We'll just agree to it. Call it something to do with the North Sea, who cares? It's not the moon, though, is it? So just bear that in mind whilst we get a new hangout sorted.
Is it worth it for the 10 minutes? Might as well just stick with this hangout.
To you?
We've only lost 10th man. No offence, 10th man. I'm really sorry that we've had you booted out of the hangout, but it's just you, as in just one person, not just because it's just you. That's not what I mean.
Was I sniped also because I had to
you were
rejoin?
sniped. Sorry.
That's okay.
It's because I had my page on full screen and I couldn't watch the hangout and have it presented. That's why I don't like presenting videos, because stuff like that happens when I'm not 100% paying attention to the hangout itself. Just unfortunate, but I think it was worth it to get that point in, because it was Ranty that did all the graphical work, i.e., rubbed out the curve and drew various different lines that I wanted and overlaid one on top of the other. So it was that simple to just bring it up and describe what I mean when I'm saying, well, they've drawn loads of sight lines, but they're not meaning angles. They just look like it, so they conjure the image that you've got angles. It's just a cheap trick, same as adding the angular size after the fact. It's like, well, you've already done your calculations based on actual size. The fact that you convert it to an angular size after the fact doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean that you're taking into account perspective.
Yeah, like I was saying before, that's the tactic they use. They have to get you to see what they see and believe what they believe in order to reel you in.
Indeed. I wonder if the Rumpus has asked Rory for the $5,000, given that he appreciates entirely that it doesn't include perspective.
No, I've offered Zach I've offered Zach to duff Ranty in, because Ranty's trying to claim the $5,000 that Zach originally had. So I've offered Zach that. I said, look, I'll duff Ranty in if you want, so that you can get the $5,000. I
mean, I said to Ranty, if it's open to you, then it's equally open to Kosho, who says we're an idiot for thinking the calculator needs perspective in it. Or Rumpus, who makes it clear that the calculator's not performing viewing functionality and perspective is not required. Or Wiggles, who has made his own calculator using the exact same actual sizes and makes it very clear that perspective is not a requirement in a geometric calculation. Or Bob the Science Guy, who made it clear that the angular resolution limit or diffraction limit is not included in the begging the question, proof of nothing, perspective hijacking curve calculator. So if Ranty can claim that $5,000, so can all that list of people too. The only difference being that they're all on Rory's side. How amusing that is.
I wonder where all the call-out videos from, how they say, like, they always confidently claim that they call each other out frequently. I haven't seen any videos calling Rory out for getting this wrong. Where's all the ballers calling Rory out on, like, publicly with the hate videos and the vitriol, and where's all the trolls in chat going, yeah, Rory, you dickhead, you got it wrong. Commit suicide, you dickhead, and all that kind of shit. Where is that?
That doesn't matter. They're looking for confirmation bias or a personal attack that makes them think this person's personally not credible, therefore they don't need listening to. That's what they're looking for, purely confirmation bias. So this is almost a non sequitur in the brain of a globehead. It means nothing to them.
Rumpus is saying it in chat now, because the Metabunk calculator does not include perspective, that means Rory owes Rumpus $5,000.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So Kosho, Wiggles, Bob the Fallacy Guy, Rumpus, well, they're all as entitled to the $5,000 as Ranty is, but Zach was ultimately the person who took him up on the challenge first. I mean, I didn't even know who he was when Zach was taking him up on it, let's put it that way. I don't know if Ranty, I'm sure Ranty would claim that he knew him years ago, because he wants that $5,000 that'll never materialise.
So Rumpus, where's your call-out video with Rory, like, basically getting it wrong? Where is that?
Yeah, nice that we can reiterate that it doesn't include perspective and show exactly what that means with a nice little illustration of how the angular size resolution limit is ignored, and something 10,000 miles away, the only cause that can ever be asserted is Earth curve obstruction. Ludicrous! when obviously a Rubik's Cube at 10 miles can't be seen. But what would the calculator say was causing that? Oh, Earth curve.
Where does it
Perspective
show
not
that,
included.
that addition to the Metabunk curve calculator, that angular size thing? Where does that get shown in the depiction underneath? Because I don't see it. Is it in there?
I don't know. It's been a long time since I've been to the calculation. The last time I looked was when Walter Bislin included the angular size after the fact. And they're like, oh, it's got perspective. It's like, what? Just because he's put it in a perspective view? The basis of the depiction in that view is a geometric calculation, a side elevation. The mathematics aren't any different. It's the first question I asked when Walter Bislin's calculator came out. How is the mathematics different to Metabunk's? Answer, it isn't. Because if it was, we'd be holding everyone in the chat right now, including Rumpus, to task on why he used the wrong mathematics. If Walter Bislin's right and Metabunk is wrong, well, the answer to that question is no, they're exactly the same. They do the exact same function. They hijack perspective. That's their task. That's what they do. They beg the question, get you to assume you're on a sphere, and then hijack perspective and claim that something 10,000 miles away, the only reason it's disappeared is because Earth's got in the way.
Let me just address Rumpus's chat comment there. He says, I'm about to engage with Rory on a Metabunk thread about perspective on the Metabunk calculator. The new feature on the calculation... Oops, it's gone off screen, hang on. The new feature of the calculator, the angle size, is a perspective operation. How does it influence and interact with the observation, though? Because that's what we need to see. We need to see what the influence... Because what's it there for unless it shows the effect?
No, I'll ask a different question. So the addition of perspective to this calculation, Rumpus, would obviously therefore render the previous mathematics you presented to us here incorrect, because they did not include this additional function. It is, of course, I'm right in my assumption, Rumpus, that this is an additional function of perspective where it previously was not included. So I'd like to know when Rumpus will be back on, cap in hand, to explain why the mathematics he previously used was so wrong, having not included this viewing function, now included as an extra function applied to the mathematics. Of course, I could be wrong, like asserted earlier, which is to say they are exactly the same mathematics. We'll see.
And that would also mean that when Rumpus has said things like in the past, I've never been wrong on anything. I've always been 100% right on absolutely everything. Well, that would mean that every time you've applied the Metabunk curve calculator, Rumpus, unfortunately, it would mean that you were absolutely 100% wrong. Correct?
However, they are the same mathematics. Giving you an angular size after you have applied actual size geometric mathematics to something that is a viewing function, and then applying an angular size to represent it as a viewing function after you've calculated how much is gone, is not including perspective. Hello, Rumpus. No audio, my friend.
So my sound was off if anybody was talking to me.
Good to have you. So are you here to correct all the errors, the massive amount of errors that didn't include this extra function when you previously presented your mathematics here?
All my previous mathematics was absolutely correct and still is correct.
Oh, but
Did you take into account perspective?
No, because it doesn't need to be taken into account.
Oh, but the new ones do, don't they? But the new ones do, don't they?
No, they don't, because the...
Excellent, thank you very much. You can piss off now. I don't want you here, you particularly pretentious prick. Thank you, that's all I needed. Now you can piss off.
Shout out to Rumpus.
Shout out to Rumpus. Rory, you owe Zach £5,000.
Yeah.
Oh,
Sniper
Jonathan's sniper alert.
Yeah, just to back what I've just said, thank you, Rumpus, for joining and making it absolutely clear that I was 100% correct and your mathematics have in no way changed. What you presented prior to any different additional function after your geometric maths have been applied to the actual sizes of things that you claim are blocked only by Earth curve obstruction and not due to a limited angle. Yeah, none of them have changed. His mathematics was the same, and it is the same. It will remain the same. It's a hijacking of perspective. Nothing will ever change. That's how they've tricked you into thinking perspective, objects getting smaller with distance, is actually Earth curve obstruction. It isn't.
And another thing, if you listen to Rumpus's tactics very carefully, what you'll notice is that he's only concerned with calling you stupid and moronic, because what he tried to do is that nobody wants to be stupid or moronic. So He thinks that by calling you that, you will believe what he believes just to avoid being stupid and moronic. Well, that's his tactic. It doesn't matter whether he knows what he's talking about or not. That's not important to him. What's important to him is to play on your idea of wanting to belong to something that's intelligent. So he plays on that. In other words, Rumpus is saying, if you don't believe him, you're stupid. So if you don't want to be stupid, then you better listen to everything that he says.
Rumpus is the most knowledgeable globehead in the rhetoric that there is, in my humble opinion. He knows more about the rhetoric than anybody else on their side. He knows it back to front, inside out. That's why he's not wrong, and why I knew he'd come up on the show and back me, and he did. Because he's not got anything wrong in regards to their rhetoric thus far. He's made minor mistakes that we labour and, you know, just because they do it. But ultimately speaking, Rumpus knows the rhetoric like the back of his hand. And he's not going to make that kind of mistake. He's not going to assert that a geometric calculator includes perspective. He's going to justify why it doesn't have it and why it doesn't need it. Because that's the rhetoric, and he understands it. Unlike Rory. So, you know, these guys that have come in from the outside and haven't conversed with people like Rumpus about how their argument is structured, you know, I shouldn't be doing this, but ultimately it's needed. These guys need to talk to Rumpus. You know, if you want an education in how to argue globe, go and speak to Rumpus. It's a shame that all the people who do will pick up his tactics and learn how to Rumpus at the same time, but ultimately at least he's not getting this stuff wrong. When we say it's got no perspective, he doesn't say, yeah, it does. He goes, it doesn't need it. Well, that's a different phraseology that makes you understand that he understands at least the bullshit that he's spouting. You know, he understands the rhetoric. Well, Rory doesn't. And it's left the globe side in a particularly awkward position where they're having to make changes to their calculations because it looks wrong. Looks like they've excluded something. But when they add something on top of the calculations, it doesn't suddenly mean that they've included it. Otherwise, all of the old mathematics for the guru that is Rumpus would be wrong, and they're not. Oh, Jonathan.
Oh, we got a sniper again.
Are we near there? Might lose the panel. Where we at? 57 minutes. That might be my opportunity anyway to round out this live show. So if you are watching this on the Nathan Oakley channel, then unfortunately this is where we bid you farewell. So a huge, massive, enormous thank you to all of you for tuning in, smashing the super chat, liking, sharing, subscribing, all that good stuff. If you'd like to keep yourself occupied after the live stream is over, then go to nathanoakley.com and check out the Flat Earth Debate Forum to keep up to date with the community debate. Also, a massive, enormous thank you to all of the debating panel for making today's debate possible. I've been Nathan Oakley, and I'll see you all in the next video. Stay tuned if you're watching on Nathan Oakley 1980, as there will be an after show to follow.
Oh, what a day! What a lovely day!